everyone, thank you for joining me. Nice to see you again. It has been such a busy week this week, not just on the Oakbound front, on quite a lot of fronts, but certainly on the Oakbound front, which is what I'm going to talk about today. Now, you may have seen in various social media posts, because we now have a lot of social media, so I abandoned X, as many people have. Quite honestly, I very rarely posted on Twitter anyway. I didn't really understand twitting. Doesn't mean that I understand the new things any better, but they seem to be things that people are doing, so I thought I should probably do them. We're still on Instagram and Facebook for the moment. We're now on Blue Sky, and we're now finding our way through Discord as well. So if you want to find us there, come and find us there. It'd be nice to see you. And if you understand what those things are for and how you use them, do tell me, because I'm completely clueless. Anyway, you may have seen on one of these platforms over the last couple of weeks that I have been sort of teasing shots of parts of our new game. So we have got a new game coming out. Hopefully beginning of April. My major hope is to have it ready for release at Salute, and to have lots of boxes of it at Salute, and to sell lots of it at Salute. So if you're at Salute, come along and buy stuff. There will be a pre-order, and that will be a members thing. So members, you'll be asked, or offered, not asked, because it's up to you. You will be offered a pre-order in the next month or so. So that's the aim, and this is exciting for me because it's a boxed game. Now, boxed games are kind of a make and break thing for small companies. They typically don't work very well for small companies because there's an awful lot of expense involved in creating a boxed game. A lot of time and a lot of effort, but an awful lot of expense. And so they've got to be worthwhile. And so it's a big step for me to do a boxed game. But I thought it was time. We've been going 10 years. This will be the year 11 of Oakbound. And I thought it was time that we release something boxed. I'm going to do a full video for members. Sorry, this is another thing for members. So the membership package, the kind of idea is that, like I was doing with the Patreon, I will go on a sort of insider look for members. So if you're interested in the sort of day-to-day workings of Oakbound, and the less day-to-day like this, of putting together a set and getting it ready for production, and all of the things that have to be thought about, the rules design, the packaging, the miniatures that are going into it, the components, the sourcing of bits and pieces. That's what I'm going to be talking about for members. So I'll be doing a video for members very shortly on that. But what I thought I would do for this channel is a couple of videos on what the game actually is and how it's going to play. So if you have the Woods rulebook, you will know that there are rules for tunnel adventures in there, which are kind of dungeon bashing, but aren't really dungeons in the Woods world, but there are lots of tunnels, so that's why that exists. It's underground, subterranean adventuring, using the classic grid system, right, for dungeon bashing. Then back in November, it was earlier than that. Back in September, wasn't it, that we announced the release of Mount Silence at Night, the Advent Calendar project. And if you've been playing that, that's also a dungeon bashy type thing. And the rules for that are the basic level rules for this game. So if you've been playing through that, you'll already be familiar with a lot of the concepts that I'm going to talk about. It's also very rooted in the Woods skirmish game. So if you're playing the Woods skirmish game, then you will know, you'll be prepared for what I'm about to talk about and explain with the new game. The new game is called, you may know if you've got the newsletter. That's another thing we do, by the way, the monthly newsletter. It's now working. The sign-up forms are fixed. So if you go to oakbound.co.uk/news, you can sign up for the newsletter. Right, that's the end of pitching. I promise that's the last thing I will say that isn't directly related to this video. You'll know that the name of it is Thunder Under Mount Silence, and this is something that I've been working on for a very long time. Mount Silence and the Goblinomic Wars are something that was picked up very, very early in the development of the Woods as a game. It's a concept that's been in my head for a long time. There are some elements of it that I've known I want to explore, and this is an opportunity to do that. It's a battle between gnomes and goblins under Mount Silence, which was the Fey administrative capital, and the gnomes are the administrators living in the high parts of the mountain, and the goblins are the slaves, mining and quarrying for stone and minerals, and manning the forges and things in the lower bowels of the mountain. The Goblinomic Wars come about after the Fey's departure from the realm, when everything starts to fall apart, and the goblins rebel and rise up against their overlords and attempt to overthrow the gnomish structures on top of Mount Silence. And who can blame them, really? They've had a bit of a crap time of it, so it's only fair to let them have a bit of time in the sunlight, isn't it? So this is the premise for the game. The gnomes are trying to defend their home against the goblins. The goblins are trying to rise up and acquire their freedom and break out from the mountain, or at least make the mountain their own. And as it all takes place under the mountain, it's a tunnel game. It's a dungeon-y type game. And so we've got dungeon tiles and passages. And I really wanted to do something that was a kind of classic dungeon crawly thing, but using the things that the Woods does, I think, particularly well. That is the structure of it, the way that combat works, the aesthetics of it, of course. And I wanted to make it a solo play game, because I know a lot of people like solo adventures, and one of the things that Dungeon Bashing does particularly well, in my view, is to play very well by yourself. So I wanted to do that, and I also wanted to make it a very simple, very easy game. So like Hero Quest, which you'll know is a favourite of mine, is a very simple, very easy mechanic, but still very enjoyable. I wanted to do something similar to that. Maybe not quite that simple, but still to make it an enjoyable, easy to play, easy to learn set of mechanisms. It has board tiles, so I have got over here a selection of the board tiles. These are actually my mock-up ones, not the actual ones. I've been cutting those up over the duration of this last week, but I will use these for example, for demonstration. Oops. Around. These have the benefit of being printed on matte paper. They haven't got the gloss, shiny finish that the actual ones have, so they're a bit easier to photograph. They read a bit better on screen. And I didn't want to have a fixed board. I wanted to have very much like the Advanced Hero Quest structure, where you have tiles that you are building a dungeon, essentially, as you go, laying out a terrain in front of you, and you don't quite know where the dungeon's going to go. You don't know what's going to be around the next corner. So I wanted that, which is a bit of a headache, because actually it's much easier to create a one-off fixed board than it is to create a series of dungeon tiles, and then you've got to find a mechanic for fitting them together. But I think we've come up with a very simple, very straightforward mechanic for that, which I will talk about a bit in the next video. But what I want to focus on at the moment is the way that the game actually plays. So you play as the gnomes. Let me place a couple of gnomes down in front of me where you can maybe see them there. So we've got a couple of gnomes, and your opponents are the goblins. You come in a few types. There's spear goblins, there's axe goblins, and then there's the big Stalu, the heavy red cap elite warriors, who are nasty, nasty, nasty. And you'll know, if you played Mount Silence, you'll know that all goblins are quite nasty in this. They're not easy things to overcome because they're very bouncy. They take an awful lot of punishment. They may not be very effective, but they take an awful lot of punishment before they fall over. So you do have to use your gnome's capacities to their best abilities in order to overcome the goblins. And it's done on an action point based system, as is the woods. So you've got exactly the same stat line as you would have in the woods, but we use fewer of them in this game. So it's a reduced stat line. But if you were to compare it to the ones that are in the woods, you would see that there's this very strong correlation between them. So when it's your turn, models take it in turns based on their decisiveness, as they do in the woods. In this case, the goblins have a lower decisiveness than the gnomes, so it ends up being the gnomes go, then the goblins go, then the gnomes go, then the goblins go, and that works fine. If you were to add in other creatures from the woods, which you can do because the profiles are compatible, then you might have a bit more of a staggered activation system. And when you activate, you can spend action points equal to your stamina on doing stuff, and there are not very many actions. If you played Mount Silence, you'll know the actions are move, open and close a door, interact generally, and fight. Well, in Thunder Under Mount Silence, there's even fewer, because actually opening and closing a door is just an interact action. So you've got 3 actions. You can move, you can interact, and once per turn you can have a fight. You don't have to fight as the last thing that you do. So if you're in a square next to an opponent, you can fight and then move away. If you are not, you can move and then fight and then move away again afterwards. So you're not always stuck in combat, and that's an important thing to know. When you move a number of spaces equal to your agility. For gnomes, they're pretty slow moving, so it's 1 space per action point. Goblins move 2 spaces per action point, so they're a lot faster. You can block an opponent's passage by putting a model in front. Goblins, because they have a higher than 1 movement rate, they can move over or through a friendly model but not an enemy model. You just can't end up on the same space as another model, understandably. If you have got a model that's been knocked prone, it's lying on its back as a result of a combat, let's say, then you can move over that as if it was a friendly model, so that doesn't block movement. But you can't end up on the same space, so that means that gnomes can never pass one another in the tight confines of the tunnels. Interacting is just a single action point of stamina to interact with something that's in a square next to you. So there's a chest in a square next to you. You could spend an interact action to open the chest, for example, and the various quests will say if there are any restrictions or special things associated with the stuff that's lying around the dungeon. So the other thing that's fairly crucial is light. Not that many dungeon games that I know of take into account light sources, but this one does. It's important for what you can see. So in the dark confines of a tunnel, your models can see a number of spaces in front of them equal to their perception. It's like it being night in a game of the woods and being able to see a number of inches in front of you equal to your perception. Obviously you'll be able to see what's on the board, but you won't necessarily be able to target it with a fight action, for example, unless you can see it. In fact, when you put, and we'll talk about this a bit in the next video, when you put models first onto a board, goblin enemy models that is, they pop up almost like blip tokens. They pop up as these things called shapes in the gloom, where you can kind of see where they are but not what they are until they are revealed. So you'll get a sort of sense of what's in the room, but not exactly what's there until you can see it. Light sources give you a bit of extra visibility, so the light source counts as the first space, and then within your perception range of that, so gnome here, if they have a perception of 3, they can see 1, to 3 spaces from the light source, always going orthogonally, side to side, backwards and forwards, never going diagonally. That's just a fairly standard dungeon gaming mechanic, otherwise things get too mobile and you can just see everything. So that's, yeah, you're working everything orthogonally, yeah, that gives you a bit of extra visibility within the room. So if you can see an opponent who can't see you, then you can creep up on them, and that gives you an advantage in combat. Also, being a solo play game, although there are team play and versus play modes as well. It's a solo play game, so all of the baddies are running off sort of flow charts, AI, if you like. It's not really AI, is it? But it's flow charts anyway of action priorities. So if they can see this, they'll do this. If they can't, move down to the next step. Making sure that your enemies can't see you is important for working your way through those flow diagrams and surviving, hopefully. So the other big part of the game obviously is combat. Being a fairly simple dungeon bashy game, it's all about moving and killing things to move forwards into the dungeon and find your objective. There is an objective basis to it. It's not just moving and killing, it's about finding things, discovering things, sneaking around as well, but obviously moving and killing is a big part of the game. And how that works is that if you're in a space adjacent to an enemy, it has to be to your front or to your side. You can't strike behind normally unless you've got special rules. Then you can roll a number of attack dice. I should get these out of this little baggie that I've been packing. Attack dice are red dice. Yes, we are rolling dice. Woods fans will be horrified, but we are rolling dice just because in a solo play game that element of chance you want, and also it makes the game a lot more simple than having to cross-reference tables and things. So you roll a number of dice that's equal to your strength plus whatever stamina you want to commit to the attack. The defender can roll a number of dice equal to their strength plus whatever stamina they might have left to defend. And then you have a little pool of dice once you've rolled, and you remove any duplicates. So if I rolled a 6 on my attack dice, but I also rolled a 6 on the defense dice, I would remove those too, and you carry on until you've got no pairs left. Then you discard the remainder of the defense dice, and the remaining attack dice give you a pool of options. Each number on the dice gives you a different thing that you can do. Generally, the higher numbers are the better things. So with a roll of 1, you can inflict 1 damage. With a roll of 3, you can inflict 2 damage. With a roll of 6, you can inflict 3 damage. So it's better damage-wise to roll higher numbers. But the other things are useful as well. You can shunt, so you can move your opponent's models about. You can knock them over, and you can regain stamina to use either immediately if it's your turn, or to use later on for defensive purposes. So the results of the combat are based upon what you've rolled there. Then you remove any endurance. So each model will start with the same endurance as they have in the woods. So gnomes have 6 endurance, and they're shown by little black dice, which you can either put next to the model themselves, or you can put on these little character cards. They'll be slightly bigger than this. This is a little bit tiny, but they will be in the back of the rulebook for you to chop out and use, so you can put them on there if you prefer to keep from the board being all cluttered with dice. If someone's reduced to 0 stamina, 0 endurance, they're just taken off the board as a casualty. We've also got little purple dice here that you can use to track remaining stamina. So far, so good. These are things that you will have remembered from Thunder Under Mount Silence at Night if you were playing that over Christmas. That was the gist of the game. You've got a few extra things in Thunder Under Mount Silence. You would have had in Mount Silence at Night, there'll be special weapons options. So you'll have your club, which lets you add 1 point of damage every time you roll for defense. So roll for attack. So if you rolled a 6 for attack normally and you would inflict 3 damage with a club, that would be 4 damage. But also if you rolled something like a 2, which is a shunt to move a model back, with a club, you would move a model, but you would also do a point of damage. So a club is a guaranteed point of damage any time that you've got an attack dice left over. You've got an axe, which lets you not only hit the model in front of you, but you can carry a swing through and hit a model to either side of it, and you can carry on swinging if you've rolled enough attack dice that you have things left over and hitting models surrounding you. And you have the sword, which lets you choose an attack dice result before you roll. So it's not guaranteed that your opponent isn't going to roll that in defense, but if you've got a result that you know that you want in a combat, set a dice to that before you roll your attack dice, and then you'll know that you've got at least one of those results to play with. So those were in Mount Silence at Night, but the gnomes now have a bit of extra firepower, as it were. So you can substitute 2 of the gnomes. You start with a squad of 6 gnomes. You can substitute 2 of your gnomes for one of the guild-specific special weapons teams. So the gnomes in the woods, they have this sort of philosophy of life which is based around a sense of 3 elements. They are sound and heat and light, and each one of those has a guild that's responsible for maintaining the balance of those elements within gnome society. So you can be accompanied by one of those guild teams, but the guilds don't get on with each other very well, so you can only ever have one of those guild teams with you. If you have the Bite Eat Guild weapon team, that's the Guild of Light. Then you have the Gloom Spreaders, who have got a sort of portable furnace with them, and they pump smoke into a room and stop models within that room being able to see each other. If you have the Yetna weapon team, Yetna is the Guild of Sound, and they have the Din Mufflers, who have the sort of inflatable sacking device, which can be used ostensibly to block the sound from a corridor or a room by filling a door, but actually blocks movement as well. So that's its main job, is to block off sections of the dungeon, or at least make it hard for the goblins to get through them. And then the Baka Guild weapons team, Baka being the Guild of Heat, they have got the... I can't remember what I called them. They were going to be something. I will look up. I will write on here what they're called. Fuel dampers. That's what they're called. The fuel dampers. And that essentially it's like a high pressure hose. So you can squirt it down a room or down a corridor, and it knocks back all of the models in that corridor, so it pushes them further away, so that either you can escape, or if they get pushed into each other, then they do damage to one another. So it's a way of taking out a lot of models in one go. And these are mounted on a double base, so the idea that these were sculpted so that they would fit onto 2 of the round bases, and they can move and they can pivot around the front base. But there's a little bit of extra positioning to them. So if you can't turn in a corridor, or you can't face in a certain direction, then you can't use it. So you have to be a bit wary of that. And also, although they operate as effectively 2 gnomes, they share a pool of stamina and a pool of endurance, and it's not as high a pool of endurance as 2 separate gnomes, so you kind of have to protect them as well as them offering you a bit of a strategic bonus. To counter that on the goblin side, so the goblins have got these red caps, the Stalu, the vicious fighters, who are the same stamina and endurance as a goblin, and agility in fact, but with a higher strength, so they roll more, and they're armed with glaives, which are a bit like a combination of a spear and an axe, so they can fight at range, but they're less good at fighting in a space directly next to each other. So if you're going to get up close with them, then you're at an advantage if you can get under their weapon reach. Now, another thing that's new about Thunder Under Mount Silence is that you have got 3 triangular tokens that are the balance. They're balance tokens. And what you can do with those is temporarily give the gnomes a bit of an advantage. So gnomish philosophy is based around the balance of these 3 elements. So you can upset the balance by making one of these elements more dominant temporarily to give you an advantage. So you can upset the sound balance to give yourself an extra point of agility. Essentially, you can do more, or you can move further. You can upset the heat balance to give you a reroll on your attack dice, and you can upset the light balance to give you an extra couple of points of endurance, or to regain a couple of points of endurance. But every time you upset the balance, you flip one of these triangular tokens in. That upsets the balance. The triangle is not complete, and you can't win unless you've rectified the balance, and you can't use any of the other abilities of the balance until you've reset it. And to reset it, you have to take a penalty. So you have to lose stamina to reset the gain agility button. You have to lose attack dice to reset the attack reroll, and you have to lose defense dice to reset the endurance regain. So it gives you something that you can use in a crisis to get out of a sticky situation, because as you'll know, if you've played the Mount Silence at Night game, it can be quite hard. Goblins are tough, right? This is not an easy walk in the park. And this will give you a bit of an edge, but then you've got to choose when you're going to take that penalty in order to reset it. So I hope that gives you a bit of a sense of the basic structures of the game. Next week I'm going to talk about the other thing that this game does, which is the random dungeon building element, and I will show you how that works. But yeah, if you're interested, go and visit our various social media platforms. I told you what they are, I'll link them below. And if you want to know a bit more about how the components for the game were put together, how the design was done, and all the rest of it, then yeah, maybe consider being a member, and I'll be able to tell you. Take care, and I shall see you next week.